Imagine losing your daughter to a domestic homicide. The grief is just, it's suffocating.
Yeah, it's completely paralyzed.
Right, but you can't actually stop to process it because you have grandchildren who are now suddenly effectively orphaned.
And they're terrified, obviously, and they're looking to you for safety.
Exactly. So you step up. You take them in, you try to rebuild some kind of routine for them.
You're just trying to survive at that point.
Yeah. And say you want to take them to a specialized trauma therapist, or maybe just on a school trip to give them a tiny sliver of normalcy, but then you hit a wall.
A massive legal wall.
A legal wall. You are told by the state that to take your newly orphaned grandchildren to a doctor, you need a written permission from her killer.
It sounds completely made up, doesn't it?
It sounds like a dystopian nightmare. But for decades, that wasn't fiction. That was standard UK family law.
It really is a jarring reality to confront. You would assume that the moment a crime of that absolute magnitude is committed, any legal tether between the perpetrator and the victim's family is just, it's instantly severed.
Right, you think it's automatic.
Exactly, because that's basic human intuition. But historically, the architecture of family law has been radically detached from that intuition.
It's like they existed in two different universes.
Yeah, the system treated the murderer and the father as, like, two completely different people occupying the same body. It is a profound structural flaw in how society handles the aftermath of extreme domestic violence.
And today we are exploring exactly how that flaw operates, and more importantly, how it is being systematically dismantled.
Which is the hopeful part of this deep dive.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at this incredible collision of devastating human tragedy and deeply entrenched bureaucratic loopholes.
And our mission today is really to unpack the mechanics of a groundbreaking piece of legislation called Jade's Law.
Right. And the relentless advocacy work of the man behind it. Plus, we'll get into a highly urgent real-time campaign happening right now, like literally right now in Northern Ireland, to close a terrifying geographic gap in justice.
To really grasp the magnitude of Jade's Law, we have to start by looking at the engine behind it.
Because these laws don't just write themselves, right?
Oh, no, not at all. The legal shifts we were talking about don't just spontaneously generate in Parliament. They require a very specific type of sustained, grueling pressure.
And in this case, that pressure comes heavily from Edwin Duggan.
Yes, he is an advocate based in North Wales, around the Chester and Deeside area.
And he's not just an angry citizen, he has the legal chops.
Right. He holds an LLB with honors of Bachelor of Laws, which gives him a highly formal technical understanding of legal frameworks.
But he doesn't just sit in a corporate office.
No, he operates very much at the grassroots level. He focuses relentlessly on human rights, anti-knife crime, and domestic homicide.
And that combination of skills is so critical to understand. With an LLB honors, he knows the granular mechanics of statute drafting.
He knows exactly how legal precedents are set.
Yeah, but he's taking that high-level legal knowledge and applying it directly to street-level trauma. It seems incredibly rare to find someone who can navigate the raw emotional landscape of a grieving community while also speaking that sterile, highly technical language required to actually amend a parliamentary bill.
It is rare. Most advocates lean heavily into one or the other. You have incredible community organizers who can rally thousands of people, but they might struggle to draft a workable legislative amendment.
Right, because the bureaucracy is just dense.
Exactly. And on the flip side, you have brilliant legal scholars who can draft airtight statutes, but have zero connection to the lived reality of the people those statutes affect.
They're too far removed from the ground.
Yeah, and Duggan bridges that gap. He understands that to change a broken system, you have to speak both the language of human grief and the language of bureaucratic procedure.
And his work isn't limited to just family law, is it? It's a much broader fight against street-level violence.
Oh, definitely. He is actively calling for a dedicated minister for knife crime prevention in the UK.
Which is a huge undertaking. And he's backing this up by tracking horrific, high-profile incidents across the country. Like, just looking at the summer of 2024 alone, he was heavily focused on the tragedies in Southcourt in July.
And the subsequent violence in Birmingham and Walton in August.
Right.
But his work on family law, which culminated in Jade's Law, is the rewriting of the fundamental building codes of justice.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's look at those old building codes. Let's unpack the anatomy of Jade's Law, because the system that existed before this legislation was enacted is genuinely, it's just hard to comprehend.
It really is.
Previously, if a parent murdered their partner, their legal parental responsibility remained entirely intact. The surviving family had to initiate separate, grueling civil court battles just to sever those rights.
And the burden of proof was entirely on the grieving family. I mean, just think about the mechanics of what that actually required.
It's unbelievable.
A grandmother who has literally just buried her murdered daughter suddenly becomes the primary caregiver to traumatized children. She now has to go out and hire a family law solicitor.
Which is not cheap.
Not at all. Often she's liquidating her savings or her pension to do so. She has to formally petition the family court. She has to stand before a judge and affirmatively prove why the convicted murderer of her daughter is unfit to make decisions about the children's welfare.
She has to basically build a whole new legal case against the killer.
Exactly.
Wait, I really don't understand this. Okay, let's unpack this. A criminal court judge, sitting in a Crown court, has just looked at all the evidence, convicted this person of murder, and handed down a life sentence.
Right.
But a family court judge sitting in a different building down the street pretends that conviction doesn't automatically matter. How did the legal system justify this for decades? How does the quote-unquote right of a convicted murderer biologically outrank the emotional safety of a child?
It really comes down to deeply entrenched jurisdictional silos and this historical doctrine of biological entitlement.
Biological entitlement. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, for centuries, English common law and subsequently the Children Act 1989 operated on this foundational presumption that a child's welfare is intrinsically tied to having both biological parents involved in their life.
So biology trumps everything else.
Yeah. The biological tie was viewed as an almost unassailable legal absolute. Consequently, the legal system drew a massive rigid wall between criminal jurisdiction and civil family jurisdiction.
So they genuinely view the act of murder and the capacity to parent as completely unrelated variables.
They did. I know it sounds crazy, but the traditional legal philosophy argued that the criminal court is where the state punishes the individual for a crime against an adult.
Okay.
But parental responsibility is a civil matter concerning the child. The system essentially said, you committed the ultimate crime against your spouse and you will go to prison for that. But your relationship with your child is a separate, isolated legal entity.
That is just, that is just an astonishing level of compartmentalization.
It prioritized the abstract legal concept of the family unit over the grim, lived reality of the child's safety and the surviving family's trauma.
And the result of that compartmentalization is that while this lengthy family court battle dragged on, and sometimes it dragged on for years, right?
Oh, absolutely. Years of hearings and delays.
During all that time, the convicted killer maintained a legally sanctioned tether of control. They had to be consulted on the child's schooling, on their medical treatments, on whether they could travel abroad for a holiday.
Which is horrific.
Yeah, the perpetrator could literally use the bureaucracy of the family court to continue exerting coercive control and inflicting psychological abuse from behind bars.
Which is exactly why Jade's law is such a monumental paradigm shift. It completely dismantles that old philosophy.
So how does it actually work now?
Under this new framework in England and Wales, parental responsibility is automatically suspended for a parent convicted of murder or voluntary manslaughter against the other parent.
Automatically.
Automatically. There is no waiting period. There is no initial family court battle required from the grandparents. The criminal conviction in the Crown Court now automatically triggers a civil protection of the family court.
That is huge.
It is. But the true genius of the legislation is actually how it handles the burden of proof.
Right. It completely flips it.
Exactly. Instead of the traumatized family having to scrape together funds to beg the court to take the rights away, the convicted killer must now legally prove why they should retain any rights.
Yeah.
The starting assumption of the law shifts from the biological parent has rights until proven otherwise to a convicted killer has inherently abandoned their rights and must overcome an astronomical legal hurdle to ever get them back.
It removes the weapon of bureaucratic control right out of the perpetrator's hands.
Precisely.
It is an incredibly elegant solution to a horrific problem. It takes a system that was fundamentally weaponized against victims and rewires it to protect them by default.
And we should mention, this work hasn't gone unnoticed. Duggan was actually shortlisted for Best Awareness Campaign at the True Crime Awards in London.
Oh, right. In June 2025.
Exactly. So there is widespread recognition of how crucial this framework is.
But, and this is the really difficult part to swallow, because of how the United Kingdom drew its legislative lines, this profound legal victory just, it just stops.
Yeah, it hits a border.
Right. If you drive a few hours, take a ferry across the Irish Sea, and land in Belfast, the Victims and Prisoners Act 2024 doesn't exist. This brings us to what we're calling a terrifying geographic lottery of justice.
This is the complex reality of devolved government in the UK.
Can you break down what devolution actually means in this context?
Sure. While Westminster passes laws for the entire UK on matters like defense or foreign policy, powers over things like health, education, and crucially, justice and family law are devolved to the national assemblies. So Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Because criminal justice and family law are devolved in Northern Ireland, the legislation passed in London for England and Wales simply does not apply there.
Which means that today, right now, families in Northern Ireland who suffer this kind of tragedy have zero automatic legal protection.
None.
They are still living entirely under the old, re-traumatizing system we just spent the last 10 minutes describing. They are still forced to hire solicitors, go to family court, and legally ask a murderer for permission to take a child to the doctor.
It's devastating.
And the statistics show that this isn't some rare hypothetical edge case either. The sources highlight that Northern Ireland is statistically one of the most dangerous places in Europe for a woman to live.
The data is incredibly grim. Since 2020, over 30 women have been killed in Northern Ireland by a partner, an ex-partner, or a husband.
That number is shocking.
And you really have to contextualize that number. Northern Ireland has a population of roughly 1.9 million people. A rate of 30 domestic homicides of women in that time frame, in a population that size, represents a severe systemic crisis.
It's an epidemic.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as Duggan's advocacy points out, many of these women were mothers. They left behind children who are now trapped in the exact legal nightmare Jade's law was designed to end.
It's like, imagine living in a massive house and you install a state-of-the-art security system in 3 of the rooms to keep your family safe, but you are legally forbidden from putting a lock on the front door because the front hallway sits in a different administrative zone.
Yeah.
Trauma doesn't respect borders, so the idea that your protection is determined by a postcode is just maddening.
That analogy works for the geography, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's actually messier and more dangerous than that.
How?
It's not just a missing lock on the front door. It's that the legal system in that hallway actively hands the keys to the intruder.
Oh, wow.
The state is legally mandating that the surviving family must negotiate with the killer. And it becomes even more stark when you look at the broader context of the island of Ireland.
Right, because across the border in the Republic of Ireland, there is a massive push for Valerie's Law.
Exactly, which is built on the exact same principles as Jade's law.
Okay, so if you project this forward, you are looking at a bizarre and deeply unjust legislative sandwich.
That's a good way to put it.
You will have the Republic of Ireland protecting its citizens with Valerie's Law. You will have England and Wales protecting their citizens with Jade's Law. And Northern Ireland, which shares a physical land border with the Republic and a political union with England and Wales, will be left as an isolated legal dark zone right in the middle.
It creates a scenario where a murderer in Belfast retains legal power that a murderer in Dublin or Liverpool is automatically stripped of.
That is an indefensible reality. And that is exactly what sparked the massive mobilization we are seeing right now. We are talking about a campaign that just officially launched on April 16th, 2026.
Literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, at the Guildhall in Derry, or Londonderry. This is a real-time push for a Jade's Law equivalent in Northern Ireland. And here's where it gets really interesting. Edwin Duggan is physically there.
Which is incredible.
Right. He spearheaded the law in England and Wales. He won. He could have easily stepped back, focused entirely on his knife crime book, maybe enjoyed the True Crime Awards nomination, and considered his job done.
Most people would have.
But instead, he is traveling across jurisdictions to keep fighting.
It speaks to a very specific philosophy of advocacy. For Duggan, passing Jade's Law in Westminster wasn't a political trophy. It was a proof of concept.
He proved it could be done.
Exactly. He views this as a universal human rights issue, not a localized political victory. There is a profound moral exhaustion in this kind of work.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
The reality that once you manage to fight your way through a broken system and hold the door open for your own community, you are immediately obligated to walk to the next jurisdiction and kick their broken door down too. He is seeking what he terms parity and dignity across all borders.
And they're being incredibly tactical about how they kick that door down in Northern Ireland. They aren't just standing outside Stormont, the Northern Ireland Assembly, waving signs and asking for general reform.
No, they are much smarter than that.
They have a highly specific legislative target. They are demanding that the principles of Jade's law be immediately incorporated into the criminal justice, sentencing, etc. bill, which is currently active before the Assembly.
And that specificity is the absolute hallmark of effective lobbying.
Because starting from scratch is too slow.
Oh, drafting a brand new piece of legislation from scratch, bringing it to the floor, debating it, and passing it can take years.
Yeah.
It requires massive political capital.
Right.
But if there's already a relevant bill moving through the legislative machinery, in this case, a bill dealing with criminal justice and sentencing, you can draft an amendment to attach to it.
Like hitching a ride on a train that's already moving?
Precisely. Duggan and the campaign are essentially saying to the Assembly, the vehicle is already moving. We have handed you the engine parts. Just bolt them on. It vastly accelerates the timeline for getting these families protected.
And they are backing up that tactical legal maneuver with undeniable grassroots pressure. Let's look at the petition that launched alongside this campaign in Derry. Within a very short window, they secured 4,076 total signatures.
With 3,201 of those verified.
Right. But the raw numbers aren't even the most compelling part to me. It's the demographics of the people signing it. You look at the list and you see Angela, a teaching assistant from Liverpool, Lisa, a photographer from Derry. You see school nurses, skin therapists, software developers, carers from D-side.
This raises an important question, right? We really need to analyze why those specific professions matter so much to a campaign like this.
Yeah, why is that so impactful?
Because when a petition is signed just by lawyers, academics, and politicians, it is so easy for an assembly to view it as an abstract policy debate. But look at the people you just listed. A teaching assistant is the person who sits next to the traumatized, suddenly orphaned child in the classroom.
Right.
They are the ones watching that child disassociate because they had to visit their mother's killer in prison over the weekend. A school nurse is the one treating the physical manifestations of that child's extreme anxiety.
Even the skin therapists and hairdressers, I mean, they are notoriously the frontline confidants for victims of domestic abuse. They see the bruises before anyone else does.
Exactly. This campaign is being driven by the very fabric of the community, the professionals who actually have to absorb and manage the fallout of the state's legal failures.
That is so powerful.
By mobilizing these everyday citizens across different cities and professions, the campaign strips away the sterile political jargon. It forces the members of the Legislative Assembly to look at this not as a legal technicality, but as a basic, undeniable issue of human morality and child safeguarding.
And that moral clarity is the absolute core of Duggan's rhetoric. If you read the transcript of his keynote speech at the Guildhall, it is a masterclass in dismantling the old legal philosophy we talked about earlier.
It really is.
He starts by explicitly acknowledging how sacred the bond of parental responsibility is. He speaks to them as a father, but then he pivots to this devastatingly simple logic. He asks the room, if a parent takes the life of their child's other parent, did they, in the moment they committed that act, truly have their child's best interests at heart?
The question that answers itself.
Right. Were they considering the emotional and physical safety of their child when they picked up the weapon?
And the unavoidable answer is no. By forcing the listener to answer that question, Duggan completely reframes the legal concept of parental rights. Historically, the law viewed parental responsibility as a right, like a possession or a title that the state had to forcibly confiscate.
But Duggan flips that entirely.
He argues that parental responsibility is not a trophy. It is a fundamental duty to protect, nurture, and prioritize the child.
So his argument is that the state isn't actually taking anything away at all.
Exactly. He posits that a person who commits domestic homicide against their partner has, through that very action, actively abandoned their duty to the child.
Wow. They gave it up the second they committed the crime.
Yes. Jade's law, therefore, isn't a punitive measure designed to strip a right away from a criminal. It's simply the legal system finally catching up to reality and formally recognizing that the parent has already voluntarily forfeited their duty.
It is a profound philosophical shift from rights-based family law to duty and welfare-based family law.
Which makes it almost impossible for lawmakers to argue against.
He is looking at the Northern Ireland Assembly and saying, we have done the legal heavy lifting. We drafted the framework in England. It works, and we have rallied the public. All you have to do is adopt it. He is asking them for a unity of compassion.
Unity of compassion. That's a strong phrase.
Right. He is demanding that they recognize that a grieving grandmother in Derry faces the exact same trauma, the exact same financial ruin, and the exact same coercive control as a grandmother in Chester. And therefore, she deserves the exact same automatic protection under the law.
By presenting it this way, Duggan lowers the political cost for the assembly to take action, because the solution is already written and publicly supported.
They just have to say yes.
But simultaneously, he is astronomically raising the moral cost of inaction.
How so?
If an assembly member votes against amending the criminal justice bill now, they aren't just voting against a policy. They are actively voting to force future traumatized families to beg murderers for permission to live their lives. It is a brilliant, highly effective pressure campaign.
It really is an incredible journey to trace. So what does this all mean for us, taking a step back? We started by looking at the raw, visceral trauma of knife crime and domestic violence on the streets.
Yeah, the acute crisis.
Right. And we saw how Edwin Duggan took his formal legal training and aimed it squarely at a deeply entrenched historical flaw in family law. A flaw that prioritized the abstract rights of a killer over the immediate safety of a child.
And we broke down how Jade's law finally reversed that catastrophic burden of proof in England and Wales.
Exactly. And we ended up in the Guildhall in Derry watching everyday citizens, nurses, teachers, and carers mobilize to force a devolved government to close a dangerous geographic loophole.
It serves as a stark reminder of what the law actually is.
Yeah, it's not just paper.
No, it's so easy to view legislation as just dry text debated in grand, distant rooms. But the law is the lived daily reality of vulnerable people. A loophole in a statute isn't just a bureaucratic oversight. It is a grieving family forced into a courtroom with a killer.
The advocacy we've explored today is the grueling, essential work of forcing the rigid mechanics of the justice system to finally align with basic human empathy.
Well said.
And it leaves you with a thought that is, genuinely hard to shake.
What's that?
Well, if it took until the mid-2020s and the relentless campaigning of grassroots advocates just to force lawmakers to explicitly state that convicted murderers shouldn't retain legal authority over the children of their victims, what else is hiding in our statutes?
That is a chilling thought.
Right. What other invisible laws are currently governing our local jurisdictions that defy basic human logic? Just sitting there in the dark, waiting for the next tragedy to finally expose them. It makes you realize how much of the legal system we blindly accept as just simply because no one has kicked the door down yet.